So the name stuck, and then they added heavy metal umlaut to it. Mold said they liked the somewhat mysterious quality of the name, and it set them apart from other hardcore punk groups with names like Social Red Youth Dynasty Brigade Distortion. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles. My name's John, his name's Andy. Was an honest man asked me for the phone. I tried to take control. Oh, I don't see it that way. I don't see it that way. More on that another time, perhaps not. Um, so, because it's Friday, we have a special Friday request for one of our lovely, lovely viewers. So this is an interesting one, actually, that came on the list. It's Bob Page, 665, just one shy of the devil. And he dropped a comment on the Rural Alberta Advantage episode that we did, brother. And it's just his band, Skidoo. Now, I have to say, I had a bit of a checkered history of Hüsker. Tried it a couple of times, didn't take. But we spun the bottle, and this time it's ended up, obviously, with Andy having a go. So maybe you'll fare better.
Well,
the track...
to be fair, I have not a similar history as you do, but it was probably like 20 years ago. Someone put on a couple of their songs. It didn't turn me away, but it didn't like grab me either.
Same here.
So it was sort of like they just fell by the wayside, and I never got around to revisiting them. But they've come up more and more, probably because of this channel, and also I think just other dialogue I've had with some of my and so I figured I'll go back and give them a second go. It's been plenty enough time, and I think one thing this channel's proven for both of us, sometimes stepping away from a genre or a band or an artist and then revisiting them with a different mindset years later can sometimes open up your eyes to, oh, I do actually kind of enjoy this, or there are aspects of this that I missed the first time around. So
yeah,
I could say that knowing the song that's been offered up, I'm not familiar with it, but to be honest with you, I couldn't even tell you the songs that I did hear all those years ago. So I'm flying fairly blind.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, Bob offered up Hüsker Sorry Somehow. Well, best of British. Go off and give it a listen and tell us what you think.
I will. Hey, sounds like we're about to get something there. I think 14 seconds in, we're already off to the first verse. This thing is moving. Starts off with that quick roll of the snare. Then we get these kind of chugging, distorted guitars. And below that, you can kind of hear this nice rounded bass kind of working along. And there's also these bright and sharp organ sounds kind of vibrating in the mix as well. So yeah, a lot of moving parts and a lot of just quick movement. I mean, the song's got pace for sure. So, and we're only just a few seconds into this thing, so let's take it back and let it roll through.
Touch
Okay, I think that was the first verse and the first chorus. Sounds like we're moving quickly into the second verse here. This thing is definitely got some pace to it. He was talking about something in the first verse about time, and then he touches on life. And I think he says life too can cut you, and I've cut you out of mine. I think something like that, which is a pretty biting lyric. I don't know who this is aimed at, but it definitely sounds like it's kind of a look back on somebody or a relationship with a certain somebody. And I don't know, it doesn't sound good. I'll tell you that much. But I'm loving the energy here. And it oddly, I mean, the chorus, it's just that refrain of, you know, sorry somehow, or some variation thereof. I mean, I'll catch it as it progresses, but not a lot of lyrical content to that. I like how at the end of each line there's sort of this room for the guitar to do a little bit of, you know, like a flourish or whatever, and then it repeats before it goes back. So even though the lyrics of the verse are pretty biting, there is still sense this of some kind of remorse. It sounds like the kind that even the narrator himself doesn't quite have a full grasp of, as he says sorry somehow, which I think is relatable. You know, sometimes things don't work out, and you don't know really where the blame goes, or what percent to what party, you know, the blame, you know, should be assigned. But there's still this overall feeling of, you know, remorse. uh Maybe not that it's over, but just that the way it all went down, I don't know. But I'm, you know, it seems like that's, if that's what it is, it's a pretty universal feeling that, you know, a lot of us have experienced at some point. So yeah, let's see what the rest has in store. Nice. Says something like, "You're not getting an apology from me," and then he says, "You know, you're making me sorry." So there's, I don't know, it's just kind of funny, ironic, you know, turn of phrase. How he's, "You're not getting an apology. I'm sorry." But yeah, this is definitely catchy. And it's got like the earliest tinge of not what is this dirty word, right? Pop punk, but what would likely go on to inspire it, which is interesting because we've talked about that with other bands of late. One particularly comes to mind. But yeah, funny stuff. The lyrics made me chuckle there. So here we go. Those keys ring. Okay, so we have this sort of extended chorus or doubled chorus where the singer takes a little bit of liberty with the vocalization toward the end of that segues into this lead guitar bit, which is really interesting too, because we've talked about how, a lead is so unconventional in punk music. So this is sort of a changing of the tide a little bit, or a graying of the lines around the surrounding the unwritten rules, which again we've had with, and I mean, Descendants. We've covered them, and they sort of stumbled into the same thing, where they would chuck these little fun but rudimentary leads into the mix, and this is kind of akin to that. Although, I mean, honestly, the lead in this had almost this I don't want to use the term rockabilly, but like southern rock quality, kind of twang to it a little bit, which is interesting as well. It almost kind of reminded me of some of the leads you hear in Social Distortion, another band that's been featured on this channel before. So yeah, interesting stuff that I'm, where my brain is going, and they all kind of have this a similar thread. Descendants, Social Distortion, these guys, they, like, if I'm not mistaken, they all kind of started in the hardcore scene, and somehow ended up where they did in this alternative rock, post punk, pop punk kind of realm. But yeah, interesting stuff. Let's check out the rest of this thing. Mm. I really like that kind of resonant, vibrating organ that was going on there. That was a kind of a cool way to dismount. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. So much energy, attitude. The singer's voice perfectly matches both those things for the song. That energy and the attitude that the vocal track would definitely, require. Nailed it. Um, some interesting subject matter. Like I said, it's, from what I could catch, it's perfectly relatable. I've been in situations or relationships that have, soured in a way that have left me feeling like some of the things that he had espoused in this song. And it was just a really good listen for me, because I enjoyed this much more than I think I did when I had been introduced to them, God, 20 years ago at the very least, the first time, and probably the last time, so far as I can think of, that I listened to these guys. But it kind of gives me a fresh outlook. And I definitely enjoyed this track. I want to maybe go back and listen to some other stuff that I either didn't give enough attention to, or just weren't tracks that I had been shown by these guys. It's not like I gave them a whole lot of time. I think a buddy of mine may have shown me 2 or 3 tracks by these guys, and it didn't offend me, but it didn't grab me either. This has come closer to grabbing me, and I think it's because of the historical relevance of the band, and some of the contemporaries that I mentioned earlier in the reaction, where it's like, you start doing this one thing. You're born of this hardcore scene, with like some definite like overt punkness to it. And then, you know, through one means or another, or one way or another, you chuck in a little bit of melody, or too much melody, and the music starts to become this other thing that has shades of where you came from, but has this new feel to it, that, you know, Descendants had, and you know, they sort of stumbled across the same blueprint to a certain degree, Social Distortion as well. And you end up accidentally becoming pioneers of a new sound, and you know, who even is aware of it maybe in real time? It's not until younger ears hear it that then become influenced by it, that then take the baton and do something. And whether you like where it ends up or not, you can't really deny the fact that it's influential and that it made its mark in music and rock and roll. So for that, I do appreciate it. And I just generally liked the song as well. So there's that too. I can't say that that'll be applicable to all Husker Du stuff that I listen to. Um, but nonetheless, I mean, it's a good start. So, you know, thanks for bringing this back to the channel, guys. And well, sort of back to my radar and onto the channel. So yeah, let's learn a bit more about these guys, about this song. I'm sure John has done his homework. He's a good student. And we'll have plenty to discuss on the other side.
Dude, the funky gibbon, he's back. So you've had to listen to Sorry Somehow, Husker Du. What do you reckon?
Well, I reckon that this was a jaunty number with a lot of like pace to it. Almost, not almost, certainly right out of the gate. I mean, you get that classic, whenever you hear that like tight snare roll at the beginning of a song, you know it's about to like take off. That's like the international sign for here comes the ruckus. So yeah, they it did just that, and it ushers in this sort of chugging these distorted guitar chords. And as you listen closely, you can hear this nice rounded bass line worming its way beneath that. And also there are what sounds like these really sharp, bright organ like chords being shot through as well.
Yeah.
So it's lively, it's got movement, like I said, it's certainly upbeat. And then we were quickly off and running into the first verse. And I can't make out every word, but I recall several references to time and how it can both like sort of help you and hurt you. I forget the exact references, but he definitely talks about positive attributes of it and then the negative attributes of it. And I caught one line in the verse specifically, actually, and it was the final one before the song shifts to the chorus, and he delivers this line, life too can cut you, and I've cut you out of mine. And I thought that that was like an interesting kind of scathing line to deliver, which clearly sounds like it's directed at a person no longer in favorable view of the narrator. So it sounds like some sort of soured relationship has occurred, and he's looking back at it and directing some of that to the individual. The chorus kicks off, like I alluded to a moment ago, and we're getting our first iteration of it. We're only 40 seconds into the song. I think the verse started at like 12 or 13 seconds. This thing is moving. And it consists of this repeated refrain, you're making me sorry, sorry somehow. And after each delivery of the line, there's this room for a couple seconds for the guitars to kind of crash and chug and those organs to kind of shine brightly through that. And then we get back to another verse, these after another one of those tight snare rolls. And again, I'm not catching everything, but about halfway through, the singer talks about forgiveness and an apology and how the person won't be getting one from them. This is funny because, and somewhat ironic, because he immediately follows that up with a reintroduction of the chorus, which, as I mentioned earlier, he states, "You're making me sorry." So he's like, "You'll get no apology, but you're making me sorry," or "You're making me," which is less of the, I don't know, of the forgive me kind of sorry, and more of the like, I'm sorry this shit ever happened. Like it's more of a regret that it occurred and not a regret
Yeah.
of one's actions. Um, So it's just funny how he says you're not getting an apology, and then sorry is one of the next lines that follow it up. But I understand the distinction. And this is followed up by another verse, and then what feels like an extended or doubled chorus that ends with a little extra shot of attitude and vocalization by the singer as he says, "You're making me sorry somehow, and I'm not sorry," which kind of dovetails into what I just mentioned about, like, you're making me sorry somehow, but I'm not apologetic um in my regret. And this gives way to a pretty simple but solid lead on the guitar that has a little touch of like country rock twang to it, which I thought was kind of interesting and not really what I expected. um Now there are bands that this is reminding me of, but I'm going to touch on that when I get to the end. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, this was right around when I wasn't even keeping track of time or timelines when this stuff was coming out. But as I look back, I think they were all kind of contemporaries too, and two bands that have featured on the channel. So they bookend that lead portion with yet another chorus, but this one's not extended. It's just the regular two repetitions of that refrain. And then they kind of they come in for the final verse and they send us off with another bit of extended chorus with the singer repeating this shouted sorry over and over again. And this kind of happens several times until the final punctuation is added via these vibrating, resonant organ notes, which I loved. I thought that was a really cool way to wrap this song up, and they sounded really good. Um, and this was, like I mentioned before, kind of a reintroduction to the band for me, as I haven't like listened to them in probably, I would say, at least 20 years, unless I unwittingly overheard them. And it did give me this interesting look back into another one of these early forefathers of what would become, probably through accident, that gnarly phrase that we don't like using, pop punk. Um, because like this is similar, they have a similar narrative to Descendants, if I'm not mistaken, where and the other band, Social Distortion, where they start off in this hardcore scene, right? That's what they began as, from what I understand. And then they kind of like, through intent or accident or their own natural proclivities, when they started to write music, began to inject a little bit more melody into what was a very, non-melodic genre. And then by happenstance kind of stumbled upon a sound that would influence other bands who would take that baton and more chip away more at this statue to pop punk sound. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it's their intention, but it's kind of funny how it works. And it makes me appreciate not only the song. I did like the song, by the way. The song was good. It was pretty fairly decent song. So I'd listen to this happily again. And I would be, and because of it, I have now more interest in listening to Husker Du than I did, you know, 2 weeks ago, or certainly 5 years ago, something like that. But it is really interesting from and we've talked about this too, musical history, like how these things happen, how these breaks in the, or these branches in the tree of life, rock and roll, how they split off and what they create again through accident or intent. It's really interesting and cool. And I guess with a longer view now, I can sort of see this stuff clearer, and that makes this whole process of my listening to the song and are about to discuss it that much more interesting to me. So yeah, I had a lot of fun giving this thing a go and thinking and connecting all these dots as I listened to it and sort of thought about it. So
Yeah, I will say myself. So I was offered up Husker Du, I'd say first time 30 odd years ago, 35 years ago, probably. There was a guy I was at college with called Johnny Southgate. Hi, Johnny, if you're still alive.
oh, John.
He's a lovely guy. He's from Norwich, but he liked Husker Du a lot. And he goes, "Here, I've been told that this REM sound like Husker Du." So I did him a couple of tapes, gave it to him. He goes, "They're nothing like them. I fucking hated it." So that was the end of that. He gave me some Husker Du, and I said, "Yeah, and you can have that back as well." Um, so that was that. And then about, I don't know, I tried a couple of times. I probably about 10 years ago, and then about 5 years ago. And I can't remember what I listened to each time, but yeah, I said this before. The issue I have with like the hardcore sound is the lack of melody. I just find it quite boring. So yeah, so
Yeah.
people like rapidly chugging away. I've had a lifetime of that. But yeah, this was much better than anything I can remember from Muscadoo before. I will say that I have enjoyed Bob Mold's stuff, especially in the form of Sugar. I thought that his the Beaster EP, is it, or mini album, is awesome. Copper Blue's all right, and then I remember Fuel, File Under Easy Listening has been really drab and a letdown, but Beaster I thought was fantastic. So yeah, I enjoyed this as well, actually. It wasn't like wowing or anything,
Yeah.
but it was just it had enough about it to enjoy. Um, so I did the research. There's some quite interesting stuff in here as well, which I didn't know, and we'll get into it. So Husker Du was an American band formed in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1979. And the labels that have been given to them are hardcore punk or hardcore, post-hardcore, of course, punk rock and alternative rock. Now, it's interesting you mentioned about sort of this pop punk stuff. And again, we've talked about this label meaning different things on either side of the pond. It's more of a throwaway, lightweight sort of label on this side of the pond, where it's not necessarily the case on your side. And they are really synonymous, as could do, with the sort of early formation of what we now call alt rock, which
Uh-huh.
kind of sprung out of the mid 80s and onwards. And it's interesting other bands around at the time that were developing this sound as this. So the band's continuous members were Bob Mould, guitar, vocals, keyboards, percussion, Grant Hart, drums, vocals, percussion, keyboards, and Greg Lawson, bass guitar. So the members of Husker Du first performed together when Hart, Mould, Norton, and a keyboardist called Charlie Pine began. That's a nice name, isn't it? Charlie Pine.
Yeah.
Uh, Playing at a lounge near you. Began playing in 1979 in a band called Buddy and the Returnables. The new name originated when they were doing a rehearsal. In a rehearsal, they were trying to do a cover of Talking Heads' Psycho Killer. But they were unable to recall the French portions sung in the original, like the,
Yeah.
qu'est-ce que c'est and all that. So instead, they started shouting out these sort of any foreign language sort of idioms that they could remember. And one of which, apparently, was a popular 1970s memory board game called Husker Du, which, without any diacritics, any sort of funny punctuation marks, it means "do you remember" in Danish and in Norwegian. So I guess it's a bit like Guess Who or something. I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Or like a
Um,
matching game or something like that.
yeah. So the name stuck, and then they added heavy metal umlauts to it. Mold said they liked the somewhat mysterious quality of the name, and it set them apart from other hardcore punk groups with names like Social Red Youth Dynasty Brigade Distortion. Few digs there, all in one.
Yeah.
Mold also said that while Husker Du enjoyed hardcore punk in general, they never thought of themselves as an exclusively hardcore group, and that their name was an attempt to avoid being pigeonholed as such. Yeah, good luck with that. So by 1980, the band were performing regularly in Minnesota and St. Paul, and their music evolved into this fast and ferocious primal sound, making them one of the original hardcore punk bands of the Midwest. So I'm going to shoehorn this down because there's a lot of history. So they released four albums. Everything Falls Apart 983, and then Zen Arcade 984, New Day Rising 985, Flip Your Wig 985. I mean, they're pretty prolific.
Yeah.
The last of those three were all on the SST label, which obviously has links to other sort of hardcore bands, etc. And because they're independent, and they didn't chart in America at all, but in the UK, which had a bit more of a healthy indie chart,
Mhm.
they hit numbers 11, 10, and 1, respectively, in the
Yeah.
UK indie charts, which is really cool. So then they made their major label debut through Warner Brothers with Candy Apple Grey in 1986, and this is where this track comes from. So the album sort of marked this transition that the band were under, as you said, this from hardcore through to a more well-rounded
Mhm.
sonic style, which would be later become known as alternative rock, the melody creeping in as you say, if by accident or not. As before, Bob Mould and Grant Hart wrote all the songs, and they did it independently, a bit like Lennon McCartney did later on in the career. So they do them separately and come together. Um, so while the band's early frenetic style is still there, Candy Apple Grey presents some more sort of toned down material, including quite a lot of acoustic guitar work in it, which is something you would have never had in the first few albums. There are two singles from the album. Both were written and sung by Hart. The first one, Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely, which sort of scrapes into the really high echelons, like 100 and something in the charts, and Sorry Somehow, which you just heard. The latter of which the music video crept onto and was aired by MTV. It was the first album by Hüsker to actually chart in the Billboard Top 200. Um, However, despite getting quite a decent amount of exposure on sort of college radio and MTV, it still only managed the dizzying heights of 140. So there you go. They're not a chart band. They win in other ways. So lyrics of the song. Time heals, time goes on, and time really flies. Time hurts and time can cut you down to size. There's no need to touch you now. No, I'm doing fine. Life too, life too can cut you, and I've cut you out of mine. You're making me sorry, sorry somehow. Sorry, sorry somehow. There's no need to talk to you. Well, to know what's on your mind. There's no need to see you either. No, I'm just being kind. You want me to beg forgiveness, tender an apology. It's not my fault, and you're not getting one from me. Now I guess it's your decision. Now you decide. Take me to the cleaners, baby. Take me for a ride. Whoever cares for your affairs will sort it out for you. Send me a subpoena, baby. Tell me what to do. And then it's you're making me sorry, sorry somehow, sorry, sorry somehow, four times. And at
Mhm.
the end of that, he goes, and I'm not sorry. Guitar solo, as you say, which is I think that's the when he just shouts, "I'm not sorry." It's just like highlight for me. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that because he does sound really quite bitter at that point. So then it's back into you're making me sorry, sorry somehow another two times, and then the final sort of verse. I don't have to think about you, think about the past. Those days stand out in my mind, and those days were the last. I know the time is coming, and I'm waiting for the day. I'll give you everything in the world just to get it out of the way. You're making me sorry, sorry somehow, four times. And then it goes, you're making me sorry somehow. You're making me sorry 12 times. Sorry, 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 sorry. And it goes. It's almost like a beefed up version of Morrissey and how bitchy and bitter he is. It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, the tone,
um,
right? Yeah, yeah.
it is. It's a great little song, and obviously it's pretty clear that whatever, he's pissed off, and away you go. That's what
Yeah.
he's
I've
saying.
never heard the word sorry so much and yet not an ounce of apology. You know what I mean? Like he says sorry 12 times in a row, but you
Yeah,
know he's not begging forgiveness.
he's just doing that as he's doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. That's great.
So to back to their timeline, unfortunately, creative and personal tensions between Mould and Hart intensified. With Mould already doing most of this is quite weird, and I couldn't find any more information about this, but with Mould already doing most of the band's managerial duties, he brought in a chap called David Savoy to help. However, Savoy committed suicide on the eve of the band's 1987 tour to promote the new double album Warehouse Songs and Stories, which would eventually be the band's last album. It threw the band into a tailspin. It doesn't say whatever, that's all I could get. In I'm sure other guys probably got more info. Drop in the comments if you know about
Yeah.
the sort of situation behind that. Um, in September 2006, Hart told Q magazine, "I take full responsibility for Savoy's suicide. It was a direct result of the pressure working for Bob and me, because he was being forced into a two-faced situation." Bob Mould called Savoy's suicide the beginning of the end. The band dissolved after a show in Columbia, Missouri. Um, on the band's December 1987 tour, Hart was trying to quit heroin using a supply of methadone, but the bottle leaked. Hart still played the show, but Mould and Norton were concerned he would be unable to play the remaining shows due to withdrawal. While Hart insisted he could perform, Mould had already cancelled all the remaining dates anyway. He said that the breakup was about three people going their separate ways, referring to Hart's drug use and new relationship, Norton's recent marriage and new business, and Mould himself having quit a lifelong drinking habit back in 1986. After a band meeting on January the 26th, 1988, Mould decided to leave the band and made it official 2 days later. So that's the end of Hüsker Dü. Mould and Hart produced solo albums and formed the bands Sugar and Nova Mob, respectively. I've said about I have heard Sugar and some decent stuff there. Norton formed the band Grey Area and then played with Shogun Rationale and then became a chef. He and his ex-wife Sarah owned a restaurant in Red Wing, Minnesota called The Nortons until 2010. In addition to his restaurant duties, in 2006, Norton returned to music as the bassist for the Minnesota-based band The Gang Font. And in 2016, Norton joined the Wisconsin indie rock band Porcupine, actively performing and recording with them. Grant Hart died of liver cancer on September 13th, 2017, at the age of 56. In a public statement, Mould remembered his former bandmate as a gifted visual artist, a wonderful storyteller, and a frighteningly talented musician. Everyone touched by his spirit will always remember. On March the 30th, 2019, it was the 40th anniversary of the first Hüsker Dü show in St. Paul. Bob Mould played a concert in St. Paul in which he was supported by the band Porcupine, featuring Greg Norton. To commemorate the occasion, both former Hüsker Dü members paid tribute to their late band mate Grant Hart and included one of his songs in each of their sets, with Mould performing Never Talking to You Again and Porcupine performing their cover of Standing by the Sea.
Oh,
so there you go. There's some, bittersweet ending there, but it's nice to have paid respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
People fall out, but it's what they had together at the time that's the most important thing, and that's what the product of the music that's left behind. Yeah.
And that'll live on.
So yeah, interesting stuff. Okay, Coke, I shall wrap things up.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to this, Andy.
Thank you.
It was interesting to for myself as well to listen to some Hüsker Dü again. So thanks, Bob, for recommending this and give us an excuse to get off our arse for both of us and actually listen to the bloody stuff. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Folks out there, tell us what you think. If you like this, please hit the like button. There's quite a few people have dropped comments about Hüsker Dü in the past, so I'm sure there's some fans out there. But yeah, we'd love to hear your comments, other tracks perhaps that you could recommend that will go down a tree. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. We really appreciate everyone who supports the channel. And obviously, you got a suggestion, whack it down on a comment on any of the episodes and we'll add it to the list. Right. The list. And we will get round to it at one point. I was doing Chekhov's The Wheat. But anyway, we will get round to it at some point. So really give it a go. And you know what we like. And you know what we don't like as well. So it's in your hands. That being said, thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.